I'd like to thank you all for joining us at the Genesis Invitational. We're here today in celebration of the long-anticipated Netflix series Full Swing. And here with us today to discuss the documentary are Adam Del Deo, Vice President of Original Documentary Series at Netflix, and Chad Mumm, Chief Creative Officer at Vox Media Studios and Executive Producer of Full Swing. And of course, you all know, five-time PGA Tour winner and cast member of Full Swing, Tony Finau. I'd like to start with you, Adam. Can you just talk about why Netflix wanted to make a show like this?
Yeah, and first off, I want to thank the Genesis Invitational for having us today. It's great to be here. Listen, this was a bit of a no-brainer when we looked at it. Netflix, we really like to bring a variety of genres to our members around the world. They have different tastes, and we know a lot of them love sports. And we've been making documentaries in the sports space for some time now. When you think of Last Chance U, or Cheer, or The Last Dance, and F1 Drive to Survive, that type of a show, bringing our members inside of that type of a show to get to know the subjects, the drivers, the league. And so this really presented that opportunity. The other thing I would say is the opportunity for great storytelling. Having someone like Chad on board and Box to Box, this is a production company that made Drive to Survive, to kind of come in and look at the whole landscape and the struggles of the players and really bring a human side to the story. We know they're the best golfers in the world, but also there's the day-to-day of just being a human being in dealing with children and being in partnerships and having to kind of exist outside of the sport, being able to bring that perspective as well. So all of that was really compelling, and we're so glad that we made the bet, and today it's available around the world in 190 countries to over 230 million of our members.
Chad, what was it like producing a series alongside Box to Box, especially in the same category as shows like F1 and Cheer, as Adam mentioned?
So that partnership all got started here in LA at Soho House. I think people here at Riviera would understand Soho House. We had a dinner and we talked about what it would be like to sort of take the style of show that they had. Really, it all started with Senna, honestly, which is James K. Reese, one of the partners of Box to Box. He made that film with Asif Kapadi. It's one of the best, one of my favorite movies of all time. So just getting to have dinner with those guys and talk about this project, which we had amazing access. We had buy-in from guys like Tony. Basically, we're going to open their doors up to us for, kind of as long as it took. And we sat down, and James said something to me. He said, look, what I love about this is that golf, most normal people who don't follow the sport regularly, they have this picture in their head about what pro golf is like. And that is an exciting opportunity as a storyteller, because that means you can subvert those expectations in the first 5 minutes. And you all are inside this sport. You understand. Anytime you get a chance to peek behind the curtain, it's never really what you expect from the outside, especially as a fan. So that was the beginning of this partnership, and working with them and being able to learn from them and all the techniques and all the storytelling approaches that they use to capture the most out of their subjects, to really become fly on the wall and sort of disappear with the cameras. That real verite is what makes their filmmaking so powerful, and it's the kind of stories that we're trying to do with this series, Full Swing.
Tony, we'll turn it over to you. Can you just talk about what this experience was like and what your goal was for being a part of the show?
Yeah, thanks. It was an awesome experience. I didn't know really what to expect, but I knew I wanted to be a part of it. I think early I was one of the first guys to commit to doing this, and I was really just honored that Netflix wanted to do a show on golf. I thought that was an avenue that needed to be shown, and I thought that there were going to be a lot of great stories, and I was just happy that they looked at me and said that I could be a part of it. So honestly, early on, I was just honored that I could be one of the guys, and so I committed early. And again, I didn't really know what to expect, but I was more than happy to kind of open my doors to Netflix, to just allow them some access to off-course stuff. I think most of you guys are very familiar with the on-course stuff, but I think the real good storytelling and what Netflix is great at is giving you what you don't know, right? And so I feel like, pretty good access to my outside world and my world outside of golf, and I'm really happy I did that. I was able to check out my episode when it was all said and done, and my wife and I were happy with the storytelling. So I think they've done a great job, and time will tell if everyone agrees. But overall, I think it's for our game of golf. This is only going to be a great thing. You know, it's either going to be really good or great. That's the way I look at it. And again, I was just very, very honored at first that Netflix wanted to do something on golf and that I could be a part of it.
Talking about your episode, can you speak to some of the moments that were captured that you're really excited for fans to see?
Yeah, just going back to the storytelling, you know, my upbringing, you know, I think is quite different than most. And, you know, I take you back to Salt Lake City a little bit. You know, we take you back to Salt Lake City to where it started. And I think, you know, with the humble beginnings that I have, you know, I think that was really a cool part of my story. And then, you know, kind of how it comes full circle with how important my family is to me. And so I think my upbringing and my story is a lot different than other guys, but I think that's what's going to make the show so great is that we all have a common goal when we're on the golf course, but we go about it in a different way, and we all have different lives and different things that we like and love outside of the golf course, and I think people are going to be able to learn that from us watching the show.
A couple more questions, and then we'll get into some of your tournament questions as well. Adam, back to you. What are some of the appealing aspects of following golf specifically?
So for us, what was really appealing is the access that we were granted. So working with Chris, when this opportunity was presented to us, Chris Wandell, at the PGA, you know, they went back to Augusta and the other majors in the entire tour and said, listen, we're going to open this up and you're going to be able to come in. And that took a bit of negotiation to get there, but it happened. And then the other part was just the players jumping on board, you know, getting the top players in the PGA to buy into this and then giving us that access piece. And so we get approached by a lot of different leagues after Drive to Survive, and we're really thoughtful about which ones can really present a broad canvas of sorts. And so this combination of access, great players, competition, you know, all of that kind of the synergistic effect of that led us to a yes and being something very, very appealing.
Chad, the show, you definitely had a front row seat to the divisiveness in the game of golf over the last year. How do you see that being portrayed in the show?
Fairly. I think it was fascinating to see as kind of an outsider who was granted a lot of inside access this year, just the collegial atmosphere of life on tour that existed as this like traveling circus is a word we kept using. We talk a lot about it's like high school. And to sort of see that fractured in real time, where you're still processing, is something that's never been seen in, as far as I can tell, in like the history of sports. It's never happened during the season when you're sharing a locker next to a guy, or you're out competing against them, and maybe flying back and forth to tournaments together. Your families are in the player dining together. It was a very interesting thing to capture. And obviously, we wanted to be true to our subjects. We were given amazing access, including from some players who are no longer on the PGA Tour. And we wanted to be true to the subjects. And like we had always said when this show was first conceived, that it had to be authentic. It had to be warts and all. And ultimately, the editorial decision-making was going to, flow to us, not to the PGA Tour. And so we had final say with Netflix and our partners at Box to Box. And I think the show really speaks for itself. I think the authenticity really comes through. And that's what we're most proud of, is I think this idea that we could be present for something that was so cataclysmic and make a show that was fair, but also, opens the curtain in a way that no one's ever seen before.
Shifting gears a little bit before I open it up to questions, Tony, you're making your 9th start at the Genesis Invitational. You have 2 runner-up finishes here. What's your mentality going into this week?
Yeah, coming off some nice golf over the last few weeks. I've hit the ball really nicely for a better part of the last few months, and my game's coming together nicely. I feel like this, the start of this year. So this week I have got a good practice round in today. It was quite windy, quite cold this morning, but we got through the practice round, and the golf course looks great. And it's a golf tournament and a golf course that I would love to win on. This is the 2 runner-ups stung just because this is a golf course that I really enjoy. I think it's up there with arguably the best golf course we play on tour. And to add your name to the list of champions that I've won here on this golf course is definitely a goal of mine. So I have a chance at that this week, starting tomorrow.
All right, thank you, guys. We'll open to questions. We'll start right here.
This is a question for Chad. Were there any tournaments or narratives that you felt pressure to do them justice, like the Open Championship being the 150th or anything else?
Oh, my God, yes. Every one, probably. But, how do we shot over 700 hours of footage, original footage, and we brought in almost 6,000 hours of archive to make this series condensed down into sort of 8 45-ish minute episodes. So how do you do that kind of storytelling and capture the magnitude of just St. Andrews, period, like let alone an Open Championship at St. Andrews? You might be able to tell I am a golf nerd. I've been obsessed and played the sport my whole life. So just setting foot in St. Andrews, it's like, how could I could do an 8-episode series just on walking around that town. I think our whole focus was always on the players, and I think you'll see that when you watch the show. It was never, we made it very clear to particularly to the majors, because, they don't have events every week. It's, you kind of get one chance at it. Was that, we weren't here to make a documentary about the Open Championship or a documentary about the Masters. We're here to make a story about what it's like to compete in that event. And it's all going to be from the player's perspective. Certainly you could do, again, hours of documentary about that championship. But what we wanted you to understand as a viewer is like what it was like to compete through the lens of the guys that we were following that week. So certainly I think we did a good job capturing the magnitude of some of those moments. And the reason why is because we had a year's worth of context leading up to it.
Any other questions? Oh, right in the back, Jeff.
Tony, one of the things we weren't sure about when this was announced was how it would work for you and not inconveniencing your game and interfering and all that stuff. Can you give us an idea of kind of the nuts and bolts of how it worked and how you were able to come off seemingly very natural, even though we know that there's these gigantic rigs and people all in the back behind the scenes filming you? Can you just kind of give us an idea how it worked and if the show were to be renewed or in a different format, if you would do it again?
Yeah, basically they were everywhere. And they were ready at your beck and call, where just about anywhere you would allow them access. So it was more up to us. They pretty much were everywhere, at the golf course. And, if we allowed them to be in the locker room with us, they could come into the locker room. And so it really ended up being about me, and how much access did I want to provide to them. They wanted to be a fly on the wall, is the way that they pitched it early on, really for everything. If we wanted them to, come to my foundation event, which is one thing that they did come to, we allowed them access to that. So it was really cool. Honestly, it was. It was cool to open up my doors to, have a fly on the wall like Netflix, to just see my life and like I mentioned earlier, outside the golf course. And it was. I had a great time having them around, and we ended up having. I ended up having some great relationships formed just because the same camera crew was with me all the time, and so I got to know 2 or 3 of them like very well, and and so there was also friendships made that I would have never guessed. So it ended up being a great thing for me, but I also leaned into it that way. I looked forward to allowing that access and not looking at it as a distraction, because I was, I feel like, all in, as far as allowing them access. And I wanted some of my story to be told, I feel like. And I think if you really leaned into it, they were going to do a better job of portraying who you were. And I think I wanted to make sure that was the case, so I allowed pretty high access. And, is it something that I'll do again? I'd love to.
And just follow up, some actors don't like to watch themselves. Some of us writers don't like to read what we wrote.
Yeah.
What was it like watching yourself in 4K and, this sharp way and all the stuff you knew had been shot? What was it like?
Yeah, it was cool, but it was nerve-wracking more for me watching with my wife because, my wife was, really the one that I kind of had to pitch to, like, hey, you mind if they came here and all these things. And so because of the high access that we did allow them, we feel like for a lot of the things that we were doing outside the golf course, I wanted her to enjoy it. I wanted her to like it, and that we were portrayed in a way that we felt like was fair for us. And And they did a great job of that. She was very happy, which made me very happy. So it was more nerve-wracking because my wife was sitting next to me, and I was like, please, I hope she really likes this. And actually, Chad was, the first screening Chad was on, and with my manager. So we really enjoyed it, and I hope that our story alongside the other, episodes are really good for our game, and people enjoy it.
Yep, right there in the back.
Yeah, for the two creators of the show, we talked to Rory earlier today, and he mentioned that he set some ground rules before going into the shoot and how there were certain things that he didn't want to be shot. What was your guys' pitch to athletes like that to try and convince them to give you guys more access? And then also, if they didn't want a certain amount of access, how'd you guys adjust?
You want me to take it? So it's a great question. We told everybody, and I think Tony just mentioned, the more you lean into it, the more you're going to get out of it. And that's the reality. The more time we spend with you, the more trust can be built, the more we can fade into the background, the more that we can have context to not just show sort of your highest moments, but your low ones too. We kept saying to players, this isn't going to be tweeted tomorrow. It's coming out in 9 months. We're going to edit it. And anything you see is going to come with a year's worth of context. So this could be their lowest moment. And that happens a couple of times in the show. We're with the player, after they throw away an opportunity to win their first PGA Tour event, let alone a major championship, and they let us in the car ride home with them, almost in tears. And we just said, if you buy in, the payoff of that moment is going to be so much bigger. And so you skip from that moment to a month later, Brookline, Matt Fitzpatrick's hugging his dad as the U.S. Open champion, and you get to see the full range of emotion that goes into that. So, it's always been a bit of a dance, particularly, and Rory was a very late addition to the series. And he was originally not planned to be part of season 1. And their team was great to work with, but the plan was, hey, maybe season 2 if it happens. But I met with him at the end of the year and basically made the pitch that the world needed to hear from him now and couldn't wait another year. And he said he was in, and then from that moment on, was all in. So, it's a bit of like building trust, and, because he came in kind of towards the end of the filming process, we just didn't have as much time to spend with him. Whereas someone with Tony, who's been a part of this for, well over a year and a half, we've built a really strong relationship, and we'll continue with Rory.
Yeah, and going back to Rory, like you said, he told us that you guys believed he was as kind of an essential part of having him in the show. What made Rory so valuable to bring him on the show?
I mean, obviously, from a player perspective, we're very lucky to have many of the game's most elite players. But we didn't have, Rory, who clearly belongs in that category. And then also his life off the golf course, the leadership role that he stepped into, with his peers, felt like an unprecedented thing for a pro athlete. And it felt like, how could you not have that voice in the series to sort of, whether, deliberately or not, assume that mantle and take on that role is a fascinating thing for us, from our perspective. And, he's a very impressive person off the golf course, not just on the golf course. So, it was a no-brainer. Why do you want Rory McIlroy in your golf TV show? I think that's an easy answer.
We'll go back to Dan.
What was the process for deciding the order of the episodes? And was there ever a thought of going more chronological than you guys did?
We started this season with, a bunch of audio interviews with players, and we started to sort of sketch out relationships and dynamics where we thought maybe two players could complement each other. And I think you see, typically it's hard to carry an episode with just a single story. So you need one or two main characters, and you need some supporting cast members to help elucidate, what's going on in the player's head that they can't, they may not be able to express this directly. And so we sort of put it up on the wall, and we started looking through it. And, the part of it was dictated by the timing of our edits and as we were filming. And some of the early, episodes were some of the first ones that we had in the can. And some of those stories had clear endings, at the beginning of the year. And then when it came down to the final, order, it was a decision that we made with the team at Netflix and talked about what we thought would be best for driving interest in the series and getting people to watch all the way through.
Matt?
Anything to add?
No, you covered it.
Awesome. Chad and Adam, just kind of wondering, I know there was a long path before this became a TV show. Can you just walk me through the process of being kind of an idea in the mind of a golf fanatic and how we got to now full swing out on Netflix today?
Well, it started on a golf course, which is, I think, very fitting. Chris Wandell, who's sitting back there in the vest and a red shirt, he and I played a round of golf at CES at Shadow Creek, which I was already excited about, just playing Shadow Creek. And we talked about this idea, and I'd known some of the execs of the PGA Tour and Chris for almost 10 years, and so every time I'd see him, I'd pitch him on doing an all-access doc series. But the conversation was always like, you have to be willing to let it be warts and all. It has to be authentic. And I think maybe originally they were worried about guys like cussing, and now that's changed. And when Jay became commissioner, that was the year that we played golf at Shadow Creek, and I said, I think now's the time. And he's like, yeah, I think it is, and let's go figure out how we can make this work. And they bought in from the very beginning and understood that for this to be what it became, they had to be completely open to us having the editorial control, to not having a say in it, and to build that, sort of trust us with the access that they granted us. And so that's how it started. And then, fast forward 3 months later, I'm at the Players Championship, sort of meeting the rest of the PGA Tour team. A month later, I'm at the Masters. That's where I met Tony and Chris Armstrong, his agent. I didn't have a press pass or anything, so I was just like general admission, standing outside the ropes under the tree, and everybody's like, meet me under the tree. And I'm like, cool, I can get close to it. And I'm shouting at people like, hey, I'm like looking at my like little cheat sheet because you can't have your phones. That was like, welcome to golf. And then, a couple months later, we're just like moving along. We went and met with the Netflix team, and, Drive to Survive had just started to become a big show for them. And so we started looking at, okay, how would we expand this to include the governing bodies, get everybody on board to make this across all of golf, not just the PGA Tour. So that's when the majors came on board. And from there, it was just like, okay, we've got to go from 6 players to 25, so we have enough to tell a story. And, we could have never predicted the events of last year. But certainly, the universe, good planning tends to get smiled on by the universe, I guess.
Yeah, so we were on board conceptually, but it was a bit of a process to get everything in place. The players, the access, but you guys moved very quickly to line it up. And, we didn't want to make a watered-down version of it. We didn't want to make something that felt conventional, that wasn't truly unique to Netflix, and having that access and that built-in trust and being able to access the majors as well as the entire tour. All of that was very important to us to making, which for us is best-in-class documentary filmmaking in sports. And you guys pulled it together extremely well.
Any final questions? Oh, right here in the back.
Uh-oh.
Netflix is distributed in over 50 countries. This is such an opportunity for golf to have so much new global exposure. When you're in the editing process, thinking about that viewer in a country with not so much of a golf culture, were you thinking about what do you want to show them that's going to hook them on this sport?
I mean, for us, it's really authenticity, and what Netflix can really provide is great storytelling. We see it transcend. So whether that's a series like Lupin in France that works around the world, or Squid Game coming from Korea, becoming one of our biggest hits ever, we felt that opportunity existed inside of golf with that human element. So creating that authenticity, and through that authenticity, being able to build emotional connections outside of region, that was really the opportunity at play. So taking that same kind of formula that I mentioned in Squid Game and Lupin and then applying it into a documentary, we think that is where the opportunity is.
I would just say golf is a global sport, and it's become so much more global. I think if you look at, even the PGA Tour, you look at the flags on the leaderboards, it's so much more diverse from in terms of the countries players are playing from. And this is truly a global sport. It's one of the few global sports, like truly global sports. And so I think we always saw that opportunity, especially with a partner like Netflix, who truly does have that global reach. By the way, it's more than, it's 190 countries, max. Not more than 50. Technically, you're right. That is more than 50. But yeah, we wanted to do something that really spoke to people at a human level. I think at the end of the day, whether or not you're a golf fan, hopefully you find something to care about in this series. Tony's episode, I still get choked up. I've watched it 1,000 times because it's a powerful story that's real. And great documentary storytelling brings you into someone else's world and it immerses you in it. And there's an amazing, you can learn from that. You can escape in that. It's great entertainment. It's, no wonder that people love watching these sports docs. So I just hope everybody gets a chance to check it out and enjoys it. I hope you have as much fun watching it as we had making it.
Yeah, and I'll say Tony's episode, for me, that theme of family, like that resonates all over the world. That, to me, what your episode is really about is the tightness and the bonds and the support that family provides.
Thanks.
We have time for a couple more right in the back.
Yeah, Tony, like they kind of mentioned, the sport growing globally because of this. How important do you think this show will be to growing the game of golf, similar to the way Formula One did? I don't know how familiar you are with Drive to Survive.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, as Chad mentioned earlier, I think golf is such a great sport, and I think it can only good can come from this, from this documentary and from this docuseries. I feel like having been a part of it, it was really special, but I hope the viewers appreciate the game for what it is, and I think golf kind of sells itself, and now that we have this platform through Netflix, I think is going to be amazing. I think it's going to grow the game. I'm a fan of F1 just because of the Drive to Survive series, and my manager actually got me started on it well before I committed to do this. So I think Drive to Survive is quite a high ceiling to set, if we're trying to compare. But if it's anything even remotely close, then golf is going to be growing, So it's so cool for me, to be a part of a game was so left field for me growing up. Golf wasn't even existent, and now to be on this side, I truly think golf kind of sells itself, and what better way than through storytelling in a docuseries on Netflix. So I think it's only going to grow because of this, no question.
Go ahead, right here in the front.
This is probably for Chad. I'm just wondering, was it always meant to be 8 episodes? And given how much footage you had, were there any disputes on what made the final cut?
Good question. I think we had always originally intended it to be 8 episodes. I mean, we had played around with sort of a 9th episode, but some of the way that you just need so much story to hook somebody for 45 minutes. I know that sounds like not that much time. That's about as long as this press conference has gone on for, basically, by the way. But just you need to be able to bring people in, and it can't just be for the diehard fans. So there's definitely amazing stuff that we got that just didn't quite fit into the larger narrative. There's players that we spent a lot of time filming with that granted us a lot of access like Tony did that didn't quite have enough happen in their year to be able to make the cut for sort of this season 1. And those are hard conversations to have. Those are hard decisions to make. But there's nothing that was left on the cutting room floor that we said, man, we wish we should have put it in there. And 8, I think, is the perfect way to hook you, and the season arc that goes through and sort of culminates with, Rory's story is sort of a fitting way to end the thing.
We have time for 2 more questions, and then we'll let Chad leave. Claire?
Tony, are you ready for Lena to become a house name and a star?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm ready. I know she's ready. She's ready. She's ready to... She's been trying to get TikTok famous, so... No, in all seriousness, yeah, I mean, I couldn't have done it without her, and... after watching the episode, she was definitely the star. So hopefully people enjoy it, not only our episode but the whole show. But yeah, I think she's more than ready to be the star, and I'm ready to step behind the scenes and let her be the star.
I wouldn't sleep on Drace either, by the way.
Yeah, that's right. Drace has some nice one-liners in there.
All right, final question.
Where do you guys go from here with this? What are the plans?
You want to take it?
So we just launched today, as I said. We'll be watching it closely. And feeling very optimistic, and hopefully we'll be able to talk about more full swing in the future.
How quickly could you then turn around to do more production?
So
when you
cameras are already filming. They were in Phoenix last week, so we're prepared to kind of have that footage ready to go if we decide to move forward.
Thank you all for joining us. Tony, good luck this week.
Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.